All right, are we live? Let's see if the answer is yes. Hold on. Checking in. Yeah, it looks like we are. Okay, cool. Mic check. Yeah, it looks like we are. Okay, cool. Mic check. Good. All right, so I'll drop that volume down. I'm going to grab the link here real quick. Post updates on my social media. I'm on Twitter, the Twitter platform at Phil Kearney. Just posted on Reddit. What's up, guys? And I've posted on on Discord. So hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games. I illustrate them and I publish them online. And I have been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Spelljammer's Adventures in Space since its release in August 2022. Since then, we've published this supplement called Spelljammer Combat and Exploration, where it provides some a pretty deep a deep dig into ship combat, pilot crew roles, travel through astral sea and wild space, wild system generators. I hit like, subscribe, and a bell icon to get notifications when I'm live in the future. What's up, Chronix? We also have the document now up on Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. That's on DMsGuild here. You can check it out. And let's see, the actual Warforged and Machines playtest document that we're pulling together right now is obviously here. It's read-only for everyone else, but for me, I will be continuing to edit this today. So, hey, what's up? Cooking, watching you. Hey, right on, man. I'm happy to be a casual background noise for you to be able to enjoy your day with. So I've only got about, maybe 35 minutes today, so it's going to be a really short session. It's just my day here is absolutely crazy. So I just absolutely required myself to peel a little bit of time away to just stay in my commitment of showing up every day. But it won't be a long session. So we've already done a lot of work on there. How far in are we? Like 15, 20 pages now? We're 11 pages into the document so far on a rough format without any real flavor. We've got docents as a species that can be mounted to either autognomes or warforged. That same gemstone, soulstone, can be extracted from their normal, medium, or small-sized chassis and then plugged into a forged body. That could be a Spelljammer fighter craft up to 50 feet. It could be a war golem up to 50 feet. Spirit warriors are a elven construct created from undead bugs back in 2nd edition, which could absolutely be retooled as a composite material to also create war golems with. And then there's infernal war machines, which are road vehicles or wheeled ground vehicles from Descent into Avernus. All of these fit inside the fighter craft scale of up to 50 feet of vehicle that can be piloted by a character or an NPC. Then there's larger vessels, which would be basically any ships up to 500 feet in size, or a war titan, which is basically titans, golems, spirit warriors. These are humanoid type shape. Here's some sketching that we've done for some some very basic ideas. Here would be like a war golem. It's occupying a 4x4 space at the 5-foot scale. You can see how a 5-foot scale person would fit inside of the cavity of there. If you were playing a Warforged docent, you'd be able to just have it just get plugged into a power node and you'd be good to go. But this is a gargantuan size construct, 20 feet by 20 feet. Here's a 15 by 15 foot displacer beast construct that we built that would be, again, could be piloted by a docent. When you're just a little crystal and you can get plugged into anything that can basically move and articulate and interact with objects, you're essentially playing a mechanical druid at that point. And the wild shape form that you're limited to is whatever your gem gets plugged into. Though, let's not be fooled, we could easily make an artificer class that borrows the wild shape class feature from the druid and creates a summon construct around, like if you were playing an artificer, like a docent artificer, you'd be able to just manifest a construct body around your docent crystal and then just be able to sally forth that way. Here's a 35 by 35 foot big boy. It's an Umber Hulk construct. You can again see here at the 5-foot scale where a pilot could fit inside of the chassis of this, or again a docent could just be plugged into it anywhere and it'd be up and running and good to go. The mechanics that we have for all this mecha combat already exists inside the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book, and the mechanics are described as fighter craft. So for those that aren't indoctrinated, just tooling down here, here's all the ships, all the vessels that are larger than 50 feet that are already in Spelljammer Adventures in Space, the book that was published in August 2022. But we also have these smaller scale fighter craft, and these are all at the 5-foot scale up to 50 feet in size. A small arrow, a goblin arrow is a 15-foot, basically just a blade. It's got sharp edges on it, and it's got a harpoon flinger and a helm. You can just fling these things off of a ship and swarm larger ships as like a squadron of fighter craft. Cuttlefish is an Illithid fighter craft. It's 20 by 20 foot, 4 by 4 at the 5-foot scale. You can drop a couple of Illithid in there and use their psionic abilities to blast or capture targets with tentacles. Then we get into more interesting designs, like the Spiderling is a 8 by 8 space, a 40-foot mecha that has space for a ballista siege weapon, multiple harpoon flingers for anti-personnel weapons, as well as its legs. When your pilot or docent infuses a vessel or a ship and animates it, you become that body. So these legs can move and manipulate like a normal spider would, and you could also use them as stabbing weapons. So you can deal at a 40-foot scale, it'd be doing 4d8 damage with each leg that it spears with. So we kind of have a damage scaling that we have, and then the largest size before we get into vessels would be a Warbird, which is a 50 by 50 craft. Has a ballista. It has an Eldritch Cannon, it has harpoon flingers, and it also has sharpened wings for slashing. So you can basically use all these animated creatures. They move like creatures when you're animating them. While you're piloting, they basically become extensions of yourself as living construct bodies. So the Cuttlefish can squirm around and grab things like an octopus can. The Spider can crawl along and stab at things and grab things as a spider could. So we're just taking that same idea and we're giving it a physical form, and a humanoid form. And these humanoid forms with their hands are particularly adept at picking up tools and utilizing them. So sitting inside of the document further here, we've got our damage scaling based on weapon types. So you got weapon damage and cost of weapon scaling up. So depending on the size of your construct, like if you're a medium-sized creature, it's one time its own cost. Like a longsword is normally 15 gold pieces. A 5-foot sword would do 1dx damage, which in this case is a longsword, so it would be 1d8 damage. If it's 10 feet in size, then it would do 2dx, 15 feet 3dx, and Gargantuan is the largest upscale size that's provided in the Monster Manual, which takes weapons, as described in the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide, takes you to 4 dice of whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're using a longsword and you have a Gargantuan large sword that's 20 feet in size, then it's going to be doing 4d8 damage. But if it was like a glaive, for instance, it'd be doing 4d10 damage, and it would have reach. So you would not only have a 20-foot reach with your normal melee attacks as a Gargantuan frame, but using a glaive, you'd have reach, so you'd have a 40-foot reach instead of a 20-foot reach, because it's a reach weapon. It just doubles your distance. That's how the mechanics work. But the cost gets ridiculously high over time. Not for a high-level character, but if you're using this with low-level characters so they can fight higher CR monsters, like we were exploring last episode in Big B's Glory of the Giants, we're looking at the team of 5th-level characters taking on a facility of fire giants, which are CR9, huge-sized creatures. So you put your characters into similarly sized mecha, 15-foot warframes, and then have them pick up giant-sized swords and attack each other. You could even potentially wear giant armor and fool them into thinking that you are just a heavily armored fire giant for however long you can maintain the discipline for, kind of like in Robotech invading the Zentradi battle cruiser while exploring and investigating. a lot of fun opportunities there, and that's something I plan on role-playing probably in the next couple weeks. Damage then scales up to 5d6 at 50 feet, 66 at 100, 7, 8, 9, and then 10d damage, 10d die at the 500-foot scale, which already corresponds with the damage scaling that we have in the Combat and Exploration guide that we have here down in the Combat chapter. You can see scaling. You can see scaling and weapon damage, etc. So that's kind of what we're playing with right now. What I need to do is I don't want to duplicate all the combat mechanics from. There's like 30 pages of combat mechanics for like maneuvering and scaling and calculating like how to deal squadrons and fleet damage and stuff. I don't need to duplicate all that stuff. But I'm going to need to extract at least some of that information to drop it into this document so it can stand on its own and still be a functioning document. But it is designed to support and supplement the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book that we created. So I'm going to have to parse out where that stuff is at. But I think the big, so we already got power gear that we can use to, we have our construction costs based on the size of the construct and what kind of material you use. Material is basically like an armor type, light, medium, and heavy, or light, composite, and heavy. It's basically like the type of armoring that your vehicle has, which sets the cost per 5 foot square, and also sets the limit of AC, how much you can utilize your dexterity or your intelligence bonus to supplement your armor class. It also sets the damage reduction that the material has in combat, and it also has a base strength constitution bonus that can be applied to checks used with those machines, and there's also a cap on how dexterous you can be with these larger, heavier frames. So we have that all in there, and that's all being pulled from the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration Guide in the Equipment chapter as well. You can see all of that detail here in ship materials, damage reduction, armor class, ability checks, and saving throws. It's all detailed here as well as carrying capacity and towing capacity, which we can provide as well. So some of the things that I think we are going to want to do is I'm just kind of make a little wish list here of stuff. Let's see. Spell out movement types. Spell out pursuit versus relative point movement. So pursuit is when both vehicles are moving at the same speed in the same direction. So you can, the movement squares that you have when you're using your action economy, you're still moving in the same direction. It's just a matter of, are you like flanking, are you like passing a vehicle, or are you moving alongside it, or are you trailing behind it? These are how you would use the squares of movement that you have to maneuver around relative to other vehicles that you're in combat with that are moving. Just both moving down the road, but you can swerve and move and change lanes and attack each other relative to each other's position at these higher speeds. Because the amount of movement that you can make during a round of combat and remain within range is less than the maximum speed a vehicle is actually capable of crossing or traversing over the course of a round. You can go really far away flying or driving 50 miles per hour down the road, but you can still only attack people 10 feet away if you're using a glaive. So even though you could move at 50-foot squares to gain distance down a highway, when you're in car-to-car combat like in Mad Max, jumping from truck to truck, blowing each other up and shooting each other in the face, you're going to be working at the 5-foot scale, because that's the scale of combat that your character is going to be jumping from truck to truck. So while you're at that scale, all you have to think about is how many squares can my ship move within this space and still be safe for characters to maneuver between. That's the 5-foot scale. So while they're moving at 50-foot scale down a highway at 50 miles per hour, they can be making little micro moves to move in and away from each other in vehicles to get into and out of range of combat with each other that are actually on the trucks. Similar with spaceships, just at a much higher speed and a larger scale. Like siege weapons can attack up to a mile away. So you have to remain within a 500 square grid, like squares that are 500 feet in size, 10 by 10 is 1 mile. if you venture to scale larger than that, you can't effectively engage each other in combat anymore. It would just be a pursuit where you'd be trying to keep up with your opponent and catch up again within 1 mile so you can re-engage in combat. Or if you're attempting to evade, stay out of that 1 mile range by succeeding checks in your piloting versus your opponent to stay ahead. So that's just some of the basic ideas, but I think we need to spell that stuff out a little bit more. Need to do. We need to lean in more into each type of helm, because there's major spell jamming helms that can do 100 million miles per day of flight through space. There's minor helms which can do 1 million. There's airship engines that can do they can do 10,000 miles per 24 hours, and then you have basically land trucks that can do 1,000 miles per day if they're non-stop, just go go go. So there's pretty fantastical scale of speed at all these different scales, but vehicle combat is more designed around the flavor and the aesthetic, and it makes your world smaller. So you obviously have to think about how long can are you splitting shifts so that the car is driving 24/7, or are you forcing a drive for 10, 15 hours and then parking somewhere so you can crash and get some sleep and start over again? That's going to put a finite cap on obviously how much overland distance you can make total. Spelljamming helms also need to have a pilot swap out occasionally if you need to sleep. Warforged docents don't need to sleep. They remain alert, though inactive. So when you're plugged into the spelljamming machine, a Warforged or other construct can literally pilot 24/7 non-stop, never breaking speed as long as they aren't interrupted by something. And as long as it is quiet travel, space trucking, they can get a full rest in their 4 hours of downtime and otherwise just hang out. So docents are fantastic pilots, not only for space travel, but also for overland movement. Like Descendant Avernus has potentially, Descendant Avernus, it's not the distance between targets, it's how long does the plane force you to endure punishment before you can arrive at your destination, which we would use our astral travel mechanics of how familiar are you with the destination that you're heading for in Avernus. That's going to determine how long your truck has to drive down an empty highway, with potentially picking up harassment along the way from people that might be looking out for foreign convoys to attack. So a lot of fun gameplay there. So that's leaning into each type of helm. The movement type. There is flight allowing hover, and then there's flight requiring maneuvering, and then there's ground requiring maneuvering. And the general rule is taken from Swamp Marsh, which is while you're taking a move action, whether it's your standard action, a bonus action because of your character type, or using object interaction as your base default move action instead of movement. The character can't move while you're sitting in a chair, but you have an object interaction of them using the wheel and pedals or whatever to be able to effectively have that free movement each round. It washes out as the same action economy for the character, -1 object interaction per round, because that's being used to gain free movement. So you can object interaction to move, standard action to dash, and some characters have the ability to use their bonus action to dash as well, which makes rogues and monks actually pretty damn good pilots, because they have so much action economy that they can dump into maneuvering. They're actually really good combatants because they can use their bonus action to move and keep their standard action free for combat stuff while engaging with other vehicles or creatures. So the turn rule is basically every time you use a move action, you can turn up to 90 degrees. It's pretty simple. Doesn't matter what speed you're going at, but it basically, I could use an object interaction to move, say, 5 squares, and then I could turn 90 degrees. I could then use my dash action to immediately turn another 90 degrees or up to 5 squares, say, and then move again. And then if I have a bonus action, I could also turn 90 degrees. So I could do a 270-degree turn pretty much in space as a donut if I'm willing to spend 3 action economies worth of movement to get that extra turn. So you can effectively blow donuts and do circles in place in a parking lot in an Infernal War Machine, or as an airship, you can do a tailover to change direction of flight by spending additional action economy to get that quick turn radius. But it's eating up your action economy to do it. So it's real. The only difference there is that boats in Ghost of Salt Marshes, I believe you make your full distance and then you turn at the end of your movement. With these more maneuverable mechanics, you can use that turn anywhere, even if you don't actually move, as long as you're burning action economy as part of a move action to turn. And if you have hover speed, then you can always move in any direction that you want, just like a pixie in a dungeon can go in any direction at any time. Or you, with a fly spell active on yourself, you can just turn and go in any direction that you want, strafe sideways, even fly backwards. It allows you to have that type of maneuverability, which is the default assumption for spell jamming helms. While aircraft engine and landcraft engines assume that you have to use movement to turn up to 90 degrees. So Warforged, War Titans, War Golems, Spirit Guardians, Spirit Warriors, that type of mecha also has hover capability, if it can fly. If it doesn't have flight, it can certainly maneuver and walk and change direction and strafe, just like a character could in a dungeon at 5-foot scale, except it would probably be either like a 20, 30, 50, 500-foot scale, depending on how large the construct is. So same basic ideas there. Spell pursuits versus relative point movement. So like we were saying, when you're in a pursuit, you don't actually have to turn. You're going in the same relative direction. So everyone basically has hover while you're in a pursuit, because everyone's traveling in the same direction. The movement that you're making is relative to the object that you are in pursuit with. So you effectively have a hover speed by just going that way and just turning the wheel a little bit. You naturally strafe from side to side along the highway. Hit the accelerator, you speed up. Lay off the accelerator, you slow down. That's how you can do a rotation around another vehicle using normal 5e combat mechanics while you're both going down the road from 20 miles, 50 miles, 500 miles per hour. So, hey, right on, man. You have a good time, dude. Thanks for hanging out. So let's see. That's the basics there. We have spellcasting mechanics that already exist inside the book here that I don't think I'm going to reproduce all of, but I may reproduce a simplified version of it. Let's see. I would need to do spellcasting. Keep spellcasting simple at 5 foot, 50 foot, 500 foot scales equals normal cost and effects. Amplify 1 level equals scale up 10 times. Amp 2 level equal scale up 100 times. Like, for example, Thorn Whip. If you were to use Thorn Whip in a normal mecha, if you just cast it as a cantrip, just as a standard action to do so, it's going to have, a 20-foot reach, and it's going to pull its target 10 feet towards you. Cool. If you amplify it, the helms that we have are also spell amplifiers. So if you invest in an additional spell slot, whether by upcasting or just casting or just burning an additional first level spell slot, you can amplify the range of the spell by 10. So that Thorn Whip would be able to hit a target up to 50 feet in size, 200 feet away, and drag it 100 feet towards you as part of the action. But if you were to amplify it up to the 500-foot scale, it would instead be, instead of being 20 feet, 200 feet, 2,000 feet, it would be 2,000 feet away, and you could drag a target up to 500 feet in size, up to 1,000 feet towards you. You can't do this. It would have to be a ship of the same size as you to be able to affect things that way, like a a 5-foot creature can't effectively impact a 50-foot vehicle unless you are casting it through a 50-foot vehicle. Similarly, you can't affect a 300-foot ship unless you are more than 50 feet in size yourself. 5-foot scale, 50-foot scale, 500-foot scale. Whichever scale you are your point of reference as self is naturally, when you're piloting a ship, yourself becomes the ship. So if you're in a 200-foot ship, yourself is now occupying a 500-foot space. If you are piloting a fighter craft or like a war golem that's like 20 feet in size, your natural sense of self scales up to 50-foot squares. Even though the DM may choose to use a smaller scale, like a 15-foot or 20-foot square, to accommodate all the different vehicles and creatures that are in combat for the scenario, its native default format is 50-foot squares. So a 5-foot character can only affect a 50-foot craft if the character itself is imbuing at the 50 or 500-foot scale as well. So you have that scaling that has to coincide with each other. And it costs you extra resources to be able to upscale like that, to be able to engage at these larger scales of combat. Damage generally is not. Keep spellcasting simple. Let's see. Spell out pilot. Spell out rolls. Lean into pilot as the primary role. Room for additional crew. These Warforged machines are designed primarily to have a single character, a single creature commanding use of it, but there can be larger constructs that have weapon stations outside of what the pilot itself would be making use of its action economy. So room for additional crew, using support role, the siege crew, commander role, and if you have a whole convoy of vehicles working together, then the squadron commander role also still makes sense. But they can be simplified. I want to avoid reprinting 30-40 pages worth of vehicle movement and combat mechanics for all these different scenarios when you can just grab the book itself already. So I'm figuring out how specifically to work with that. Movement, spell versus movement. Let's see. Let's see what else we need. We have the. We were dealing with power systems and the different types of powers that can be used with like piloting powers, like different strikes, different sustained effects, exploits, maneuvers, reactions that you can take while you are piloting a war machine. Maybe I'll call it docents and war machines. I don't know. I'm not 100% yet. Let's see. Heavy armor, weapon damage, unnatural attacks, integrated orrery, power systems. There we go. Integrated powers. You pay to have additional gear attached to your war machine to be able to perform these different maneuvers, but pilots can learn maneuvers as well. So hardcoded powers to the vehicle cost require 1, and I think that's at the end of this list. All right, characters gaining power. So a character can learn powers similar to spellcasters learning spells. A by learning through the fighting style pilot combat. Pilot combat. Fighting style. So this is obviously it's going to be native to fighters, fighters, rangers, paladins. They naturally have fighting styles. Anyone can acquire a fighting style by spending a feat to do so. And if you're using the martial powers book that we've been developing, you can learn fighting styles as a power. So you can pick up any number of fighter initiative, and you can stack on a bunch of powers. So you can attune a number of powers to your vehicle as part of taking command of a war titan equal to your proficiency bonus. When you gain a level or spend a day of downtime activity, you can swap which powers you can attune to your titan. Artificer can use infusions to attune more than their proficiency bonus, as shown in the Artificer table. And then feat is empowered style. Empowered combat. You can attune to one additional power while piloting a vehicle. So you, at 5th level, you'd have 3 powers, and if you took the feat empowering combat at 5th level, you could have 4. Plus whatever gear you purchase to put on. So it's a good cash sink at mid levels. It gets pretty expensive to stack on passive powers that are always active, independent of your character. It's going to cost spellcasters additional feats to gain access to the powers that aren't just integrated into the machine, because it's going to cost them a feat for the fighter the pilot combat fighting style that gives you access to all 50 of these things. But spellcasters can, of course, cast through their war machine to target other machines or creatures that are on the battlefield. So spellcasters already have a really wide set of skills in a vehicle combat in a vehicle campaign. Granting this fighting style for free is a good idea. If in a vehicle themed campaign, granting a free pilot, granting this fighting style for free to barbarian, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue. Artificer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. There you go. So that takes care of that. It's just making it a fighting style, which opens up a menu of options, or it's just free for you to access. That feels pretty good. So what else do we need in here? Spell out rolls. Get that going on. Well, we're almost out of time for the day. That's okay. Gotta keep specialist simple. Spell out the roles. Lean into pilots. Room for additional crew. Support siege squadron. So lean into more type of helm. Spell out the movement types associated with each helm. Spell out pursuit and relative point movement. Spell out rolls, then spell out spell casting. Let's see. Example combat scenarios from Big B's Glory of the Giants. What else do I need? Sample mecha. Sample war machines. So I might need to rearrange how I have things set up. Sample war machines. Yeah, that's appropriate. List of magical gear. Vehicle power gear. Example, sample war machines. Example. Okay, so that should be. I guess that's technically the table of contents. Need to do. Build out TOC. So that's where we'll be at. Intro, building out constructs, the roles. That's about, sadly, that's about all the time I have this morning. But I'm going to be back tomorrow, and we'll keep working on this thing. So we can keep lifting text from the main document, simplifying and simplifying it so that it integrates into the document. We have the basics that we need for the different type of power gear, all the powers, how spellcasting work is in the other book, fixed versus relative pursuit movement options. We have the docent species to plug into these machines. I think that's pretty good. So far, so good. So we're coming along, and I don't expect this thing to be fast, but it's pretty. I mean, I'm just lifting and modifying various rules from the Spelljammer Combat Exploration document. So I'm going to go ahead and cut for now. We're going to come back and we're going to continue fleshing out and organizing this. We'll eventually start getting into artwork. I should probably start looking at doing artwork for this sometime soon, because the first thing I want to do is build the book cover so that I have that as a source of inspiration, and so that the project doesn't get bottlenecked because there is no book cover yet. So the last thing I want to do is be fighting with the book cover as the last thing I need to do to publish. So making the book cover first is a great way to have the book set up to win. So I think pretty soon here we're going to start using this this time that we have here to start sketching out and building our book cover. So we'll see how that goes. That's coming along. And then, so I'm here Monday through Friday in the morning making Eberron creature tokens and maps for the Crystals of Mabar adventure we have in the Carnwood of Carnath and Corvair on Eberron for 4 to 5 characters, level 7 to 8. On Monday and Thursday nights, like last night, and this upcoming Thursday, we build Spelljammer massive ship designs. We're building a 500-foot battle crab out of Vokath's base in Doom Space. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, like here now, we develop additional game mechanics. And right now, again, we are focusing on Spelljammer Docents. I think we're probably going to end up calling it Spelljammer Docents and War Machines. I'm not 100% yet. Currently, it's Warforged and Machines. I kind of like how that sounds. Warforged and Machines. It kind of has a neat little jingle to it, so I dig it. But Docents and Warforged isn't quite there. So I'll probably leave it as Warforged and Machines. Yeah. All right, that's it for now, guys. I will see you on the other side. Thanks a lot for checking this stuff out.